Hello and welcome back to 4FS Gaming. Update 1.4.4 is now on the test server, and normally this means that I would make a video showing all of the new cool stuff that's on the way. I'd talk about the new Winfield Vandal Striker variant and how good its model looks. I'd talk about the 4 new legendary skins for these scoped weapons, and I'd say that they're all pretty cool. I'd talk about the new Necromancer trait that allows you to basically use a serpent-style channeling to sacrifice 25 health and revive a partner at range. I'd talk about the new Whispersmith trait that lets you swap gear more quietly. And I'd talk about how there are now low-tier weapons lying around for you to use and pick up in the bounty hunt mode. I'd even talk about quick play. Its starting gear is changing a little bit, and now everyone starts off with a first aid kit. And I'd talk about the changes to the leaderboard and say it's great that now there's stricter requirements to get up on there, like you need a certain number of kills and hours played recently. And then I'd say that the best thing about update 1.4.4 is that those dual wield weapons from the Double or Nothing DLC can now be equipped individually, which is really cool because they're great weapons and now you don't have to dual wield with them. But that's not the point of this video. The point today is to talk about how in 1.4.4, Crytek are changing some of the shooting and movement mechanics that are core to the game in order to make quickswapping a less viable and overpowering tactic. They also want to try and balance down long ammo from utter dominance. I mean, that sounds fair. Everyone and their dog uses Sparks Uppercut because quickswapping is very strong, and apparently that's not a good thing, it's actually a bit of an exploit. Now, I'm not here today to talk about whether or not this needed changing. Some people hate Quickswap, they think it's cheesy and silly because it removes the drawback of long ammo. Some people love it because it's fun, efficient, and makes you feel badass. It's been in the game for a long time now in this form. So go onto Reddit and Discord and argue about whether or not the changes are needed at all over there. In this video, I'm going to discuss exactly what has been changed, what measures have been taken, and then I will explain why these measures are nonsensical, ineffective at actually nerfing long ammo, unfun, and just downright perplexing. I've then got some feedback for the devs at the end that you might want to watch as well. Note of course that this is a test server build and there will be changes to the specifics given community feedback before it hits the live server, but quickswapping is being tuned down. So if you are watching Crytek, please consider this my feedback. So what is different? The patch notes are pretty clear that refactored controls allow for more fluid transition between equipment actions and sprinting. This addresses the core reason quickswapping was so popular in the first place. Currently, when you fire a weapon or use certain equipment, you have to wait for the recoil animation to conclude before you are able to sprint and move normally. This can be bypassed at the moment by switching weapons. This means that quickswapping is not only an offensive tool, but it's a mobility tool used to get around after shooting so you just don't die. Now the change on the test server means that you don't need to do this. You can sprint immediately after shooting without the need to switch. Now this sounds good, right? It really should have been this way for a long time, and I know the devs wanted to make it this way for a long time. They've only just now got around to actually implementing it. Now at this point I want to talk about how on the test build at the moment it actually allows you to sprint while levering and firing the aftermath or fanning in hipfire, and a lot of the big streamers are using this to point out how ridiculous the patch is, but I really don't think this is intended at all, and hopefully it'll be fixed before 1.4.4 hits live. So I'm not going to talk about that particular instance in this video. But I want to talk about the combination between this ability to sprint after shooting with another change. It is no longer possible to interrupt the firing process right after a shot, while it is still applying recoil. This means that during the recoil animation, while the gun and your view is being launched upwards, you cannot quickswap to cancel that animation. It also means you can sprint while locked into that tight FOV. It feels so clunky to be able to sprint, but still be locked into a tight field of view recoil animation. As we can see in the background footage here, it just doesn't feel good at all. You probably don't get the feel from it by just watching. It's something that you really have to feel. It's tactile, but it feels rough. And it's much, much worse with scopes that have a tighter FOV. Yes, you can move now, but you're locked into this weird view position. Can't see much at all. It's just... it's messy. It's really messy. Now, the fact that you have to wait for the recoil animation to finish before you switch weapons also means that quickswapping is a fair bit slower. We can see from this footage exactly how much slower. People have done all kinds of tests and found you can fire 7 Dolch shots before you get that uppercut shot off after a Sparks. But I mean, the Dolch is ridiculous anyway, so what kind of comparison is that? Now to me, this is the core of what the devs intended to change. If you make quickswapping slower, then you're making it less of a dominant and reliable pushing strategy, and more something that you can still do in a pinch, but it's far less powerful. Now even if I don't necessarily agree with it, it seems like a reasonable change that suits the intention. However, again, the implementation feels really clunky. And just to be clear, they have extended the quick swap time by locking you into the recoil animation after firing your first shot. If you don't shoot, it doesn't take longer to switch weapons. Apparently this was a bug we were all exploiting for over a year to cancel your recoil by swapping. The exact same effect could have been applied by adding a small animation when pulling out your pistol, or even slowing down the existing animation to save on work. Now because the swap weapons command is queued up until after the animation for recoil is finished, it feels delayed from the input by a significant time period. The controls around shooting and switching do not feel responsive at all, and this is a big step backwards in how gunplay operates, or at least how it feels. It's so clunky, but it's not even my biggest issue with the changes. The final measure is a real enigma to me. They have massively increased weapon sway after aiming down sights with all sidearms. And I mean massively. You get 2 seconds of drunken movement after ADS, which just seems so punishing. It makes shooting accurately, unless you stay sighted in for ages with a pistol, more or less luck. It removes the skill element, and it doesn't just hurt long ammo quickswap loadouts, it hurts everything. Shotgun uppercut, crossbow builds, you name it. Unless you're running an Obrez or Vandal with Quartermaster, this is gonna hurt. Sidearms in the current 1.4.4 build are only useful for lining up an unaware target while you sit in a bush, or hip firing and spamming up close. You can't use them to compete in a mid-range open gunfight at all, unless you stand still for 2 seconds and die while your sights settle. So that's how quickswapping is being addressed, and to sum up why it is bad. It just feels so clunky, it's not responsive, and it negatively impacts, quite severely, many lower tier loadouts that were not even using the quickswap exploit at all, so rest in peace Pax and Romero. If you have watched this far, then you know everything that's changing in 1.4.4. I fully expect some tweaks to be made, especially with the sway before this hits live, so please don't panic. Don't go and abuse anyone on Discord or Reddit, don't insult the devs. If you don't like this, try it out on the test server yourself because you really do need to feel it, and then provide measured and critical feedback, like I'm about to do. So Dennis, Crytek, if you're watching, this is what I think should be done. I get that you want quickswapping toned down. I don't necessarily agree that it will help newer players compete, but I can see how dominant it is and the meta shifts are healthy for the game. But please do it differently. Despite the fact that recoil cancel is an exploit, it's been in the game for so long that it is viewed by most of the community as a mechanic, and quite a good one at that. It makes the movement and weapons feel responsive and agile, it's fun, and it just feels good to play around with. If you want to slow down the offensive capabilities of quickswap, then slow it down, but not by locking us into a recoil animation with a tight field of view. Extend or slow the animation of pulling out your pistol or secondary. This has the added benefit of making players consider more carefully what weapon they want out when moving around or pushing a building, because even without shooting, we would still have a slower weapon switch animation. Then for the sway. It's too much, and it applies in too many circumstances. If the time it takes to fire that second shot has already been increased by so much, do you really need to make the second shot so inaccurate unless you wait a further 2 seconds? Maybe you really want to nerf this mechanic into the ground, put it to bed, make it so people just don't do this offensively in combat. And if you're really sick of quickswapping, I kind of get why you might want to do that. I mean, it is used a lot. But then why would you apply this every time you ADS with a pistol? Why not only apply the sway for 2 seconds after a weapon swap? Not when you've been running around with the pistol out because you've got a shotgun on your back. I could go on about the opportunities this provides, like a sawn down Sparks with a sling that allows for faster weapon swapping at the cost of sway or bullet velocity, or the opportunity to nerf long ammo rifles by making them actually feel heavy, slowing down ADS animations, etc., or all these other things that could be done. But I fear that in its current state, this patch will be very harmful to Hunt. Not because I like quickswapping and think it shouldn't be touched, but the changes to these core mechanics of shooting and moving simply feel really clunky and unfun. It doesn't just impact us when we quickswap, it impacts us when we try to look around after firing a scoped rifle at 200 meters, and it impacts us when we try to fight mid-range with a shotgun and a sidearm. It just feels bad all around. It just seems that there's so much collateral damage in an attempt to nerf one mechanic. So, that's it. That's what I think. This is a sentence from 4FS Gaming. Thank you very much for watching and listening to my TED Talk.